Hey and welcome, I'm Hammeh. A little bit of a lore snippet for you today, and maybe it's a teaser of some things to come. Let's see what you think. So, map changes in Overwatch have been used very often before to herald perhaps teasing of new heroes and also teasing of bits of lore. Let's think of things like the Doomfist payload change when we saw the broken payload in Numbani before the release of Doomfist, the changes to Numbani Airport before the release of Orisa, and things like that. Well, there has been another little subtle map change over on the PTR thanks to DoctorDeadeye, who spotted that the Lijiang Tower in the night market section of the map billboard has had a little bit of a change. Now, the text on this billboard has been updated in the past. It's one of the ones that will occasionally get changed, like the billboards in Numbani, the news ticker for Atlas News. Now, the translation of context and tense for this is very important, but this very roughly reads, this is a combination of other people's translations, mine attempt at a butchered Google translation and others, Lu Cheng Interstellar to start a new aerospace program or set of aerospace projects. Also, attempts to re-establish contact with the Horizon Lunar Colony. Well, we've known about these actually since Horizon, the level was released last year in 2017. And then the third piece, and this is where context is important, is something like the current CEO of the group was once a moon-based scientist. So what could this mean and what could it be? Well, firstly, it may just be some updating of maps ahead of some updates. Now, a few days back on the PTR, when Rialto, the mission map from Overwatch Retribution, was released, the Blizzard team accidentally let slip onto the PTR some changes that appear to be coming to Horizon Lunar Colony. Now, these are quite big map changes, kind of a remake. You've probably seen it in news videos before. It was quite late on the PTR in the UK when it happened, so I didn't actually get on there before it was patched out. Long story short, it looks like the point B struggle that you might have on Horizon Lunar Colony with the short defenders respawn, the defenders forever spawning and falling out onto the point and extending it for a long time, is being addressed with some changes on spawn distance, as well as different sight lines and attack routes, as well as some changes in the high ground around point A. So we know that these upcoming map changes are going to be coming and that Blizzard are looking at changing Horizon. These could simply be at some point some lore teasers or snippets to drop into the map ahead of time to try and explain in the story or in the world why the Horizon Lunar Colony is being changed. Why is the layout changing? Why are we going back there, and why is it basically getting a little bit of a changing rooms makeover? Some platforms being changed around, some doorways being moved and similar. Now, when the Horizon level was released last year, we did of course learn more about the uprising of the guerrillas that apparently killed the mission scientists, and we've known about this killing of the mission scientists from Winston's bio ever since before Overwatch was released. Now, what of course has excited people a little bit is the fact that it's to do with Horizon, and when Horizon released, we did get some new characters, some new names, some new scientists, as well as some new, perhaps, oddities. Hammond, for example, has excited a lot of people. Maybe a chimp, a smaller creature who perhaps escaped into the ventilation shafts. We've seen emails amongst the people on the base about wondering where Hammond actually got to, as well as a potential teaser as to maybe Harold Winston is perhaps still alive. Now, for many people, that will immediately start talking speculation of Hero 28. I'm going to quickly talk about why I think maybe this is not something to do with Hero 28, the pros and cons, and then finally deal by having a chat about whether this could be anything to do with Harold Winston or Hammond. If you need refreshing about anything to do with the lore of Horizon Lunar Colony and all of the stuff to do with Hammond and Harold Winston and similar, I'll touch on some of it here, but my videos are in my full lore playlist that's been going for the last 2 years on Overwatch Lore and longer in the link below, so do go and check that at the end of the video. I'll link it there as well. So could this be anything to do with Hero 28? Well, it seems a little early for Hero 28 teasers if you look at the timeline that Overwatch has released heroes and maps on in the past. Let's have a look back to last year. We had Oasis at the very beginning of the year. We then had Horizon announced in late May and released in late June. Doomfist then turned up in early July, and of course we then had Junkertown and the animated short Rise and Shine at Gamescom in August of 2017. Remember, of course, we have Rialto on the PTR now. Maybe this is going to get a release, I'd say mid to late May perhaps. It might be a little bit longer out. Let's not forget we have the anniversary event coming back next month in May too. So the Overwatch team do spread out their hero releases, their events and their maps in a bit of a pattern. Now, it feels like this Rialto release and a Horizon rework might be our sort of mid-year kind of map piece until Gamescom in August, where we have got new maps and a new animated short the last 2 years in a row, and it would be a big deal if it changed from that pattern. Now, the teasers for Doomfist were a very short and quick wind up in late June and early July, and indeed the Overwatch team themselves accidentally leaked Doomfist through some build update notes that were visible regarding a Doomfist and Summer Games patch for the game, but I think that was about mid-June or so of 2017. So really in April this is feeling very, very early to be anything to do with a new hero. But who knows, a lot of people would like this new hero maybe to be something perhaps to do with Harold Winston or Hammond, or maybe think that it's something to do with a new lore drop around the Horizon Lunar Colony. So let's have a look at what we know about those and how likely or not it may be based on what we know already. So in the Harold Winston fan camp, a lot of people wonder whether he is still alive. Of course, we've seen the photo on a desk in Lijiang Tower of Winston and Harold Winston, and of course that's the same photo that Winston has shown since the animated short Recall. That's actually been there for quite a long period of time. A few people got excited over a wheelchair recently, but that's also been on the map for a reasonable period of time, and until anything is shown otherwise, I just think that that's been a piece of the scenery of Lijiang. Now, although depending on how you read Winston's sort of reaction to the photo of Harold Winston in Recall, we have never known Dr. Harold Winston's fate precisely. Although, as I said, since Horizon Lunar Colony is released in 2017, we got a little bit of a flavour that he is perhaps certainly missing in action, maybe presumed dead. Now, Winston's bio, that has been the same for a very long period of time, said his life was thrown into chaos when the other guerrillas led an uprising, killed the mission scientists and claimed the colony for their own. We then know that Winston built a makeshift rocket and escaped to Earth. So ever since sort of the beginning of Overwatch and that, we've semi-filed Harold Winston since Recall amongst perhaps the dead. But then when Horizon launched, we actually saw that in the A attacker's spawn, when you're attacking point B, of all the spacesuits of the named scientists, many of whom we see on the emails back and forth in the base, Harold Winston's is missing. Now, Harold Winston had requested emergency help at airlock 35, saying that there had been a malfunction and this wasn't a drill. We would assume that he put on his spacesuits to go and investigate this, and then that's the only spacesuit that is actually missing from the set of spacesuits in this locker room. Also, on one of the maps, we saw that the various different specimens were being tracked around the base, apart from Winston and Hammond, which is of course what kind of started all of the theorising and Hammond speculation last year. Let's say that maybe, just maybe, Dr. Harold Winston is alive. Well, how did he escape? What's he been up to this last bunch of years? I mean, when did all of this happen? We still don't know precisely in the timeline. Not that there is a precise Overwatch timeline, but the relative times when Winston kind of left the moon. Has Winston even been in touch with Harold Winston if he is still alive? I mean, if you stretch, you could say that for the last couple of years since Overwatch fell, Winston has been in seclusion. That's what his bio says, and therefore he might not have talked to Harold Winston if he is alive since then. That could explain Winston looking like he misses Harold a bit in Recall. It all depends, I guess, on your emotional reaction, what you feel that Winston is feeling when he sort of reminisces to the time he was on the moon base and thinks about Harold Winston's inspiring words to him. Now, in the UK, we have things called soap operas on TV, things like EastEnders, Coronation Street. You will have an equivalent in your country, I'm sure. And my wiser half has a saying, which is, someone's never dead in a soap opera until you actually see the body, because of their penchant for bringing characters back from the dead or back from being missing. And Overwatch, if Harold Winston is alive, it may feel just a little bit like that. It's perhaps an unfair comparison, as Overwatch is only 2 years young, as it were, and we have to remember that in terms of storytelling, and the entire universe has not been fleshed out in microscopic detail. We've not been told that Harold Winston is dead. We do not know what his fate is. It is possible that he has been alive all this time, and it just hasn't been mentioned or told as a story yet. Well, as for Hammond, he was missing at the time of Horizon. We know that he was missing. We know that he was in the vents according to the map and according to some emails. I could see another chimp, gorilla or monkey heroes happening. It could be an oddity, you know, soldiers, scientists and heroes we've seen. We've not had an oddity for a while. But I'll ask you one final question on this path of thinking. If this was anything to do with a new hero or telling of any kind of story to do with Horizon, then how would this move the story forward? It feels to me personally that we need the lore to move forwards a bit. We've been waiting for a year or so since the Sombra conspiracy, her sort of web, her eye conspiracy of who might run the world. What is Winston's Recall going to achieve? Who is answering? We've seen some of that recently. What are Talon trying to do? How is Doomfist going to start this war that was teased since the comic Masquerade? What is going to happen next? Well, hero releases so far are a big way of delivering lore, both looking back at the past and trying to move the story forward. Also, animated shorts. Anna told us about the past of Overwatch, and then a little bit about what was happening present day in Old Soldiers. Sombra told us a little bit about the Omnic Crisis, but also was focusing on the present day and Talon and setting up what was potentially a wider story arc and path in the Sombra conspiracy. Orisa was just solely looking backwards, looking at the first Omnic Crisis, with a little bit about teeing up for Doomfist's story. Doomfist, well, told us about Talon and the current day, as well as more about the past of that organisation. Moira told us a little bit about Blackwatch and the wider world of science, as well as present day Talon 2, and Brigitte has been kind of focused on the past with a little bit of present for Reinhardt. We've known what Reinhardt and Brigitte have been up to ever since really Reinhardt's comic Dragon Slayer that released before Overwatch announced way back in 2016. Now, if I get my imagination going, I can think of some ways that maybe Harold Winston or Hammond telling their stories could move the story forwards, but I don't see how it would necessarily move any of the existing threads that we've already had set up. Winston's recall, Sombra's global conspiracy, all of these things. I'm not sure how bringing in Harold Winston or Hammond at this point would actually move the story forward. And given that Brigitte is more fleshing out the universe recently with her story, having a quick look at her and Reinhardt in the present day, and giving us more details on the Lindholm family, it feels like the next hero would be good to push the story forward. And as a result, I'm not quite sure that Harold Winston or Hammond would really fulfill that role, even before you think about gameplay. Ultimately, the proof of the pudding will be when this Horizon map rework actually comes, and its timing around other events such as maps, potential releases such as when we might expect animated shorts or new heroes, and when this billboard on Lijiang actually releases from the PTR to the live servers. The timing of that as a teaser could potentially be something to keep an eye on too. There you go, a little bit of news, a little bit of theorising, a little bit of thoughts about what we might be seeing over the next couple of months. What are your thoughts on this? Do you think it's significant or not? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Do throw a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this. If you like more Overwatch lore, news, analysis on everything from comics, animated shorts and more, do check out my playlists. Cheers for tuning in. I've been Hammeh. Take it easy.